Today I'm bringing you the best TRAPTRIX deck profile for the April 2023 competitive Yu-Gi-Oh format. Let's jump into it. What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome back to another amazing Yu-Gi-Oh video. Today we're covering the best TRAPTRIX deck profile for the April 2023 competitive Yu-Gi-Oh format and what just happened at the 250th YCS. If you guys are excited for this video and to learn more about how to use this amazing mid-range deck that's part combo, part control, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. If you want to see a combo guide on how to use the strategy, then make sure to reach 30 likes on the video and of course, help us get to 150 subscribers. Once we hit those milestones, I will make sure to get that combo video out to you shortly. Let's go ahead and jump on into it. All right, so here we are with the deck profile portion of the video. This is going to be the best TRAPTRIX deck profile for the April 2023 format. There's a lot of good TRAPTRIX builds running around right now, but if you want something that's not too expensive, something that does have opportunities for growth, then this is where you want to be. So of course, we're going to start off with 3 copies of the TRAPTRIX Mermelio. This card is absolutely incredible for the strategy. It is, in my opinion, the best main deck TRAPTRIX monster. It gives you basically everything that you want. It gives you a body on board to get into Sarah. It gives you a way to search out your trap hole cards, being your TRAPTRIX Holutea, your Floodgate Trap Hole, and other cards like that, which are all really good in the metagame today. And of course, it has the ability to mandatory effect pop a card, a set spell trap, or a spell trap in general rather, that your opponent has, which is really good because the mandatory effects, even if they don't have it, it still can trigger Sarah. Very valuable here. Also, if you guys want a combo guide on how to use this TRAPTRIX deck, then make sure to smash the like button. If we hit 40 likes on this video, then I will make sure to bring that video out to you guys within the week. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, moving on is going to be 3 copies of TRAPTRIX Mantis. This card is pretty new, if I'm not mistaken. It is a card that allows you to basically, on normal summon, search for a TRAPTRIX monster, which is really good. It's the Stratos for the archetype, and it allows you to quick effect bounce a set spell trap that you control, and then gives you the option to reset it, which is really good to dodge some destruction effects, or even cards like Evenly Matched in the battle phase. Really, really strong. So moving on, those going to be 3 copies of TRAPTRIX Boudica. This card is new to the strategy. It is so incredibly good. It is very important for the deck. It is your field spell searcher on normal summon, and on special summon, it can target a special summon monster and banish it. Then during the next damage phase, your opponent can return one of their banished monsters back to their side of the field. It does not have to be the same one, but it is really good to deal with problematic cards, and it's got a really beefy defense at base of 1900. Next is going to be 2 copies of TRAPTRIX Dianea. This card is pretty important for the strategy, but you don't want to see it all the time. Having that 2 copies is nice because on normal summon you can revive back another TRAPTRIX monster, and on special summon you can set a speller trap. No, let me rephrase. You can set a whole normal trap card from your graveyard back to your side of the field, which is really good. Then it gets banished during the next end phase, so you want to use it right away. Or you want to bounce it with TRAPTRIX Mantis. Next is going to be the 2 copies of TRAPTRIX Arachnocampa. This card I think is a must play in the deck. Some builds play 2, some builds play 3. I am leaning towards the 2 copies here, and the reason for that is because you don't want to see it every hand because it's pretty searchable. At the same time, it also locks you into insects or plants, and it doesn't give you any advantage on summon. It basically gives you protection, which is the main thing, and it summons itself. So it's not even a +1, it's a neutral and card advantage. It can get you to your plays. It's nice to have for certain situations, and it can get you to trigger Sarah on your opponent's turn, but you don't want to always have it. That's the main thing. You don't want to always have it, and that's why you play it at 2 copies. A lot of the time you're searching it off of other cards though. Next is going to be 3 copies of Parallel Exceed. This is the, well, TRAPTRIX name, in all but name. It is another copy of a TRAPTRIX card, basically, even though it's not a TRAPTRIX card, because it gets you to 2 level 4s on the board to be able to overlay into a TRAPTRIX Rafflesia. You go, let's say, normal summon a TRAPTRIX Mantis, let's say, you search for a TRAPTRIX monster, you link off into Sarah, and then you trigger Parallel Exceed, you summon 2 from deck, that's 4 summons, then you go Rafflesia, that's your 5th summon, and now you're under Nibiru. You are good to go as long as you have your Graveyard Trap Hole in your deck. So really strong card here, and lets you get into basically anything, including your Time Thief Redoers or other powerful cards as well. We then play the 1 copy of Trap Trip Garden. This is the field spell for the deck. It is a mandatory play. You have to play at least 1. Some builds play 2. I prefer the 1 in this case here because it's searchable in 3 different ways with TRAPTRIX Boudica. It's also really strong because it allows you to be able to banish cards that you control or monsters that you control to resurrect cards from your graveyard, TRAPTRIX monsters in your graveyard rather, which is really good to recur back your Sarahs that have already been used and other cards as well. Next is going to be our Trap Hole cards. We have 3 copies of TRAPTRIX Holutea. This card is very, very important for the deck, and it is definitely an improvement over something like the Phantom Knights of Shade Brigading because it is searchable. You can activate it on your turn, even if it is past turn number 1, which is really strong. It gives you recursive abilities because once it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to revive back a TRAPTRIX monster. So it's really strong. Now, it is important to note that each effect can only be used once per turn, and you can only use 1 effect per turn. So for example, if you use the effect to summon itself to your side of the field, then you can't use the banish from grave effect. So keep that in mind. Still a very strong card. Next up, we're going to go over the normal trap cards, the important ones. We're going to start off with 2 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole. This card is super important for the deck. You have to play this card at 2 copies in this current format right now because Kashtira is absolutely everywhere. It is a crazy deck in the format, so keep that in mind. And if you can basically permanently book a Kashtira Fenrir or a Kashtira Unicorn, they can't actually go ahead and summon more Kashtira monsters without normal summoning. So unless they have Birth plus another name in hand, then they're pretty much screwed. Moving on though is going to be the 3 one-of Trap Hole cards. We will have 1 copy of Gravedigger's Trap Hole, 1 copy of Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare, and 1 copy of TRAPTRIX Trap Hole Nightmare. So Gravedigger's Trap Hole is important because you want to have a way around Nibiru. This is your way around it. It helps protect against hand traps, which is really good, especially with Rafflesia on board. Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare is the one that allows you to pop a monster with 2,000 or more attack and banish a monster from your opponent's graveyard if you have a normal trap in your graveyard, if your opponent special summons. They have to special summon this turn to be able to activate that. It does not have to be in response to something, so keep that in mind. It is a very good card and is decent to side out in certain matchups. Next is going to be TRAPTRIX Trap Hole Nightmare. This one here is very good if your opponent has a lot of cards that will special summon and then activate their effect the same turn. So if your opponent goes for like a Baronne, let's say, okay, and they've already used the negate on, let's say, a Floodgate Trap Hole, then they try to use the effect to pop your set card. You can activate the TRAPTRIX Trap Hole Nightmare, and then you can negate and destroy the Baronne, and you're in a good position. So these are the cards I think are absolute must plays for the TRAPTRIX deck in terms of the main engine pieces. And now we're gonna go ahead and move on to the non-engine pieces. Starting off our non-engine, we have 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. This is one of the best hand traps in the game today. It is definitely a 3-of, not only because it's great monster negation, it can be activated on your opponent's turn, but it's also a normal trap card, which is huge to trigger your TRAPTRIX Sarah. It's also really good because you can discard it for your effect of the TRAPTRIX Holutea. Absolute must-have play in the deck at 3 copies. We then have 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, which comes in the structure deck, so that's absolutely amazing to have access to. It's one of the best hand traps in the game, helps you deal with cards like Branded Fusion, which is really strong, helps you deal with cards like the Kashtira Unicorn or Fenrir to get more advantage for that card, or even the Pressure Planet. So keep that in mind. It is a card that has a lot of utility in the format though, and is really good against Rogue as well. We then have 2 copies of Nibiru, the Primal Being. Why am I playing Nibiru at 2 copies and not at 3? Well, there's a lot of builds for different strategies that really don't care about Nibiru at all. You look at something like Kashtira. If you're playing against Kashtira and they're going with the Arise Heart Pass build, they're getting to Arise Heart in 4 summons and that's it, which means Nibiru does nothing. If you're going up against an already established board, Nibiru does nothing. If you're going up against a deck like TRAPTRIX, they get to Rafflesia before their 5th summon, or on their 5th summon in this case. So Nibiru does nothing. You have to be very careful about when you want to get access to this card. So playing at 2 copies, I think, allows me to see it not too often, but just often enough that I'm happy with the ratios. Next is going to be our board breakers, and we have 5 of them, and I like the ratios here, but feel free to tinker with them, and there's a lot of other options that you can play. So I'm going to go with a copy of Gameciel and a copy of Godarla. Why am I going with 2 different kaijus here? Well, first of all, Gameciel I think is incredibly important to play because it is the smallest kaiju. It's also really good to break over something like the Arise Heart Pass build of Kashtira. And Godarla specifically I'm playing because it's a level 8. So both the Gameciel and the Godarla are level 8s. They both start with G. That's not why though, but Gameciel and Godarla are both really good. Godarla because it's bigger than Gameciel. If I have 2 kaijus in hand, I don't want to have to special summon 1 kaiju to my opponent's side of the field and another to mine and then have them crash. That doesn't make any sense at all. Godarla though allows me to bring out a bigger kaiju, which is nice, and at the same time it is an insect, which means I can use it to be able to link off into plays into something like my Oedipus, which requires insect or plant monsters. So I felt like that was the best case scenario to go with Godarla over something like Dogoron or something like that. We then have 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Now, Evenly Matched comes in the deck as well, which is really strong. You have access to an amazing board wipe that is also a normal trap to be able to discard off of the Holutea effect. It's also good to be able to trigger TRAPTRIX Sarah, so keep that in mind if you decide to go that route. Again, very rare to see Evenly Matched activated and have TRAPTRIX Sarah on field, but it is a possibility. So keep that in mind. It is a good way to trigger that card if you need to. It's a good going second card, a good board breaker, and any negate plus Evenly Matched can sometimes just be absolutely deadly in the right situation, so keep that in mind. We then have the last 2 cards here. These cards here I think are flex spots. I want to play 2 more normal traps, so I'm going to go ahead and play 2 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. I like this card a lot because it offers me a form of disruption that's not a destruction or a banish or a card that would just send things to graveyard so they can't trigger again. Having Compulse for something like a Shangri Era is really nice. Having Compulse for cards that are really annoying in the grave can be really strong as well, so I felt like having this was going to be solid. Now obviously there are cards in the main deck that you can add add to be able to strengthen the consistency and the power of the deck. I think that 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity, if you have them, are definitely really good. If you don't have them, then obviously keep the compulsory evacuation devices in. I would say that you can get rid of these and the beers, even put them into the side deck if you want to, but having 3 Pots of Prosperities, if you have them, are definitely going to be an inclusion in this deck as well. I just don't own them. Anyways, let's move on to our side deck here, our extra deck rather. So let's go ahead and cover these cards away and move on to our extra deck, which is going to be 15 cards once again, and we're going to start off with the namesake deck. The reason why the deck is the deck, that's going to be 3 copies of TRAPTRIX Sarah. Of course, this card is so good. You have to play 3 copies of Sarah in your TRAPTRIX deck. If you don't, then you're basically losing, and the reason for that is because you win this game as long as Sarah can resolve. Period. Point blank. Having Sarah on board allows you to basically have a chance to win the game because it allows you to do so much. When a other TRAPTRIX monster activates this effect, you can use Sarah's effect to be able to set a whole normal trap card directly from your deck, which is insane. And if a normal trap card is activated by yourself or your opponent, you can go ahead and special summon a TRAPTRIX monster from your deck, which is really good as long as it's not the same TRAPTRIX card on field. So you can't go Puduka if you already have a Puduka on field. Keep that in mind. This card is so good. You can't Ash the first effect to set the trap, but you can the second one, so keep that in mind. It is an amazing card and really the reason why the deck is so good. Next is going to be the 1 copy of TRAPTRIX Adipus. This card is phenomenal. Having access to a way to boost up your monsters is insane. It gives a 1,000-point boost to all of your TRAPTRIX monsters, which is crazy good to have access to. It is decently big at 1,800. It offers effect negation as well, not to monsters, but to face-up cards, which is so strong because your opponent has a floodgate on the field. You can target face-up cards your opponent controls up to the number of insects and plants that you control and negate their effects until the end of the turn. And then if you have a normal trap in your grave, you can banish one and then destroy one of the targeted cards that you had, well, one of the targeted face-up cards, which is great. So it's really good to get around a lot of weird interactions, so I'd like that quite a bit. Next up is going to be 2 copies of TRAPTRIX Rafflesia. This card is a mandatory play in the deck. I love it at 2 copies. Playing it more than that is not great. I'd say that you want to have access to other cards in your extra deck. There are the flex spots in the deck, but I don't think Rafflesia is the answer to those. Having Rafflesia is great because it offers you more negation and disruptions, because you can use it to basically send off a floodgate trap hole. If your opponent would normal or special summon a monster, you can go ahead and use it to send a TRAPTRIX Trap Hole Nightmare if your opponent's special summon monster would activate an effect. There's so many things that you can do with it, and it protects your other TRAPTRIX monsters from battle or card destructions, which is really strong. Next is going to be the 1 copy of TRAPTRIX Pingulika. Really amazing card in this format. Having access to a way to search your deck is amazing. It's big at 2,500, plus the 1,000 points from Adipus is insane, and it also gives you a way to put cards that would be sent to the graveyard as attachment to this material to be able to protect it even further, which is awesome. We then have the 1 copy of TRAPTRIX Alomaris as the final TRAPTRIX monster in the extra deck. I don't play the Link 2. I don't think you need it. It's fine to have, but not super valuable. Alomaris, excuse me, allows you to be able to revive back a level 4 insect or plant monster, which can be used for additional plays and to trigger their special summoned effects, so keep that in mind. We then have our Time Thief Redoer, which I think is also a must play in the deck. You have 3 different trap monsters. You have ways to get to it pretty consistently, and Redoer gets a lot of value when having a trap card attached to it as material because you get another interruption. You get effectively a dodge with the monster effect or the monster attachment effect of this, and if you manage to snipe a spell off of this, then you get access to a draw, which is also really strong. We're then getting to the cards I think are less important, but they're still valuable. These 2 I think are still must plays, and that's going to be a Baguska and a Zeus. I think these are must plays in the deck because Baguska protects you in case your opening hand is not the best, and Zeus is really good to break through opposing boards if you don't have access to a ton of trap cards on your side of the field. You can also go battle phase and attack with a TRAPTRIX Xyz, or any Xyz rather, crash, protect your card, or win the battle phase, whatever it might be, go into Zeus, blow up the board, and then set all of your back row. That can be really strong as well. Now for the cards I think are really just situational. Starting off with the 1 copy of Gagaga Cowboy for the time situations. Now, Cowboy for game is not as common nowadays, but I do think there are situations with timer that you want to have access to this, especially in the mirror match or in the labyrinth matchup, because those games tend to take quite a bit of time. So just keep that in mind. I do like it quite a bit just for random situations. I then think that IP Masquerena and Nightmare Unicorn make quite a bit of sense here as well. Having access to a interruption on your opponent's turn that's not a standard form of interruption like destruction or banishing is really good. The fact that you can send this to the deck is really strong. I do think that this combination, it works. It's not the best, but it does make some sense. And then finally, this card here, I'm playing it because I've been in situations where I wish I had my extra deck and I didn't, and now I don't have to worry about that. So we're gonna go with 1 copy of Salamangreat Almirash. What the hell? Why Almirash? Well, I've been in a situation where in time, I would have won with Cowboy, but my opening hand was Ash plus Parallel Exceed, and I had no way to get into a Link 1. With Almirage, I can normal summon the Ash Blossom, and I can go into Almirage, I can trigger off Paralytic Seed, and I can get into Cowboy and win that game in timer. It didn't happen, but I don't want to have that chance happen again. It's a very rare and low chance to happen. But for very subpar hands where you have to have access to, you have a bunch of going second cards, for example, and no TRAPTRIX monsters, this can help. Almirage can help. It is not the most important thing, but it is pretty useful. Onto the side deck now. We have a lot of really good options here, but I think that 3 copies of Solemn Judgment is absolutely the best side deck card that you can play going first. It's amazing because this allows you to stop these blowout cards against you, cards like Evenly Matched or cards like Harpy's Feather Duster. They're all really strong in this metagame, so having access to Judgment is super, super critical. We also have 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier. Having D-Barrier is great because not only is it a normal trap to trigger your TRAPTRIX Sarah, it can be discarded for TRAPTRIX Lutea, which is again also really strong. There's so many things that it shuts down, like Sword Soul. It can help deal with Kashtira quite a bit as well, so keep that in mind, and there's a lot that you can do with D-Barrier. Next is going to be another card that can be sent in going first or going second. Is going to be 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Depending on what kind of build your opponent's playing or what kind of deck your opponent's playing, Droll and Lockbird can just end a turn. That's really good. If you're looking up against a board of a matchup playing against Kashtira and they open up with the Pressure Planet, they always have to search for their Fenrir or their Unicorn. You can Droll on Resolution, and then your opponent can go ahead and special summon their Fenrir or their Unicorn. But what are they going to do? They can't search for the birth. They can't search for the additional monsters. They're in a tough spot. So I like this a lot, and it's also decent against Rogue right now. It's really good against Dark World, so that's also good as well, and that's a good Rogue deck too, so keep that in mind. We then have our back row 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, and the 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. You want to play these cards here. I think they're very important to have for the Labyrinth matchups, for opposing TRAPTRIX builds, so it's just a solid card to have access to. I want to have cards that banished and not destroy, because there's a lot of protection. Arachnocampa protects. Cards that would be protecting from destruction are more common than cards that protect from banishment or targeting, so that's also really important there. The life points lost doesn't matter as much in this format because you're not going to time as often as you were in tier format, so keep that in mind. And then finally, the last card in the side deck is going to be the 2 copies of Book of Eclipse. I think these cards are really good to have access to in case you play against Kashtira and you're going second and you're worried about getting zone locked or your entire back row locked out, because that could be very, very difficult. But I think that Book of Eclipse could be nice to have access to if you compare it with like a Kaiju, for example. So it's just a really strong card to have access to. But again, I think it is the least powerful card in the side deck because you have so much Kashtira hate anyways, with the Droll and Lockbirds, with the cards like your Cosmic Cyclones and Feather Duster to get rid of the back row they might have, and of course with your main deck Kaijus. I feel like Book of Eclipse can be replaced with a lot of other cards, but like I said, I do like Book of Eclipse a lot. You can replace it with Dark Ruler No More to help a Sprite, but again, Book of Eclipse for me is the way I want to go with it. So guys, that is going to be it for this deck profile for the amazing TRAPTRIX deck profile for the April 2023 format. If you guys enjoyed this video, then make sure to smash the like button. If we hit 40 likes on the video, I will bring you a combo guide for how to use TRAPTRIX, some important combos that you have to know and important interactions that you must know for this format. Guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. I've been really amazed with all the support we've gotten lately. We are almost at 150 subscribers. Maybe we can get to 200 by the time the next video goes up, which would be absolutely amazing. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time.